Nigeria's electoral body, INEC, says it has the capacity to cope with the additional responsibility of conducting local government elections if the National Assembly amends the Constitution and transfers the task to it. The INEC leadership, while meeting with federal lawmakers, also disclosed that it has no budgetary allocations to conduct the two off-cycle governorship elections in Edo and Ondo states later in the year. Dr. Sam Amadi, an associate professor of law and a RISE analyst, is here to look at the possibility of INEC conducting local government elections in Nigeria and its implications. Very warm welcome to Newsnight.
Well, thank you, Chris.
There's still a proposal before the National Assembly to further amend the Constitution to give INEC such additional task. And some people feel that INEC already, by its composition, its performances over the years, is not so much to write home about. Their opinion,
sure,
not mine.
Well, INEC would argue differently. They would say we've done well. They would say, like they said, that they're successful with the area council. I mean,
six area councils.
6 area councils. And let's not forget that oftentimes there are always disputes around tenure, winning, losses, and all that. But there are three key issues here that's really, I think, the National Assembly probably not thinking. They need more deliberate thinking here. First is, what does this mean for federalism? I mean, the notion that local elections should be conducted.
Local. Isn't that what the politicians say?
Absolutely, it's local.
The idea that all elections are local.
Good, but local offices, different from national offices. So you have elections where you have the governor, the president, the House of Assembly, maybe reasonably conducted by INEC, because in a sense, we would argue that the states is big enough, but council is very close to the people. So the question then is, if states cannot conduct local government elections because of obvious partisanship, that's the point. The point here is that the governors have hijacked annexed state electoral commissions to themselves. And their opponents, this is the dynamics here. Often, legislators at the federal level are opponents of their governors, because many of them want to replace them. And so they see the governors totalizing power, collapsing democratic institutions, which is true empirically. And so the incentive for them,
and thereby killing democracy.
The incentive for those federal legislators is to kind of, open the governor's hand and free those political space so they can compete. Good faith. But the problem is that by doing this, you're undermining democracy. Is actually a local experience. So if people can't organize themselves, can't vote, can't put their votes at local level, it's a stretch to think that suddenly they will be so invested in presidency and governorship. And that's why all over the world, whether it's the US or France, anywhere, democracy has developed from
the grassroots.
Town union,
town hall, yes.
Town hall phenomenon, like Alexis Tocqueville said about the US, democracy in America, everywhere, town hall. So if Nigeria is going to run a democracy that's top down, so we want to gumboot diplomacy again, just as the colonial masters did, force you to know how to be democratic. So the federal government will now federalize democracy at local level. I think that's wrong. Two is the notion that INEC is overburdened. They even forget that the West report talked about unbundling INEC. INEC has done a terrible job with electoral finance. For example, people think that election is just about fix a date, print ballot boxes, deliver it, declare winner. No. Campaign finance is a huge thing. I went to court, Federal High Court, Justice Nyako ruled against INEC. And I said, mandamus, that INEC should develop. INEC has never developed any bankable framework for monitoring, documenting, and penalizing electoral finance offenses. And that's why electoral campaign finance is a big problem of elections today. Look at the crisis in other parties. Look at even Labour, the new one, issue of, the chairman stole money. These things would have been managed if you had transparent, bankable, traceable, auditable framework for accounting. The judge says INEC failed. INEC has not done it. So when you look at INEC, INEC has not done proper party management. INEC has responsibility. The West report says, yank off party registration from INEC and create a political party registration agency, a different agency. INEC does that. They're failing terribly. There's no party today that has any semblance of democracy. Look at the party primaries. I mean, the courts, people forget that the courts are overloaded because of failure of regulatory supervision of political parties, whether it's in the primaries, whether it's convention, who is the chairman. Some parties have 5, 6, 7 persons claiming to be chairman of those parties. That's a major failure. So INEC has failed in party registration. INEC has failed in campaign finance. The same INEC has failed. People don't argue about whether INEC fails or not in the election, because, by the way, they forget the outcomes. But even the logistic issues are not being well dealt with. Look at the digital platforms that are supposed to run. I mean, they tell a story of hitches. So
with the billions that they spend.
So how
and they said, oh no, it doesn't matter whether you use it or not.
It doesn't matter, and you spend it. So how does, and this National Assembly lazily has not even done an audit. This National Assembly that is a real crisis we have, because after 2023 election, what the INEC, the Joint Committee should have done is to do commission independent investigation, not to establish who won the election. How did INEC run this mighty operation? Why was there a shortfall? Why didn't you have, digital platform like INEC promised? How did you spend the money? These guys just wake up in the morning, do a very shallow public hearing and say, how dare you think that the answer to democracy locally, by the way, this INEC...
Have you asked how they got to the house too? Is it not the same umpire that conducted their elections?
And so why do you think that INEC will suddenly not be partisan? For example, if you people here will not tell INEC who will be local government chairman, so that the governors basically displace governors and entrench a new form of undemocracy.
Even at the grassroots, they won't be able to go and vote.
To go and vote,
change the way.
Just the way,
they will snatch ballot box
and they will write elections in Nigeria.
We didn't see all that in the UK elections. We didn't see that in France.
Because
you just walk in and you vote.
Because
and go in.
The art
Why
of voting
is the Nigerian case different? Because are we a different human beings from,
very
space?
Because we want to be different. Look, elections can be simplified. For example, only in Nigeria jurisprudence would somebody, Supreme Court, ask you to prove that you won an election in order to win a petition. So even if you show the election was totally shambolic, even if you show that the election failed rules, you are required to prove that you have won. How will you prove that you have won when the election is itself shambolic? So if you look at our jurisprudence, if you look at our administrative rule over elections, the whole idea is not to simplify it, is to not make it transparent, is to administer. So the question, if you ask me, INEC has not earned the right to take up any extra responsibility when they have failed. I've talked about party registration. INEC has no regulatory framework to ensure that the parties play by the rule. In fact, it's a shame that parties are struggling over who won convention. The process for determining succession leadership should be very clear. And so parties have to adopt the rules, and INEC, in fact, in many cases, the INEC headquarters quarrel with their field officers on whether elections were supervised properly. So what is this benchmark of success, that the National Assembly, somebody has the thinking that the way to deal with democracy deficit in the local area is to transfer electoral management to INEC and not to deal with the issues? This is Nigerians' penchant to weaponize and instrumentalize democracy will not work. People have to go down and do democracy the normal way, contest for power, fight the governors in the local area, and determine outcomes. Go to court, use including protests. So the notion that suddenly we are going to create a wise man who curate democracy at local level is illusory. It's not going to happen. Democracy is a function of struggle. People have to have investment in outcomes and be able to spend time and resources to contend and contest in the local level. So I don't think it makes sense. So what I've said, look, it's against federalism. The local area should organize elections. 2, I'm saying that even INEC's report card over the years, their failure to conduct party registration very well, campaign financing, even voter registration is a hell of a job. We always see last minute, we see deficit, cards uncollected. So why are they burdening the same INEC that has not even measured up to average performance? Why is that the National Assembly itself cannot do proper diagnostics and look at bills and think, if they don't have, let them look for experts to tell them that this is the criteria to assess bills. Don't just have a harebrained Attorney General goes to court and wins at the Supreme Court. Then you flood the whole thing and destroy federalism because you feel like, look, federal government can federalize decency and democracy in local areas. That doesn't make any sense. There's no evidence, there's no theory that justifies theory, political science theory, that says that the federal electoral body should supervise local government election in a federalism that is tripartite, federal, state, and local government. If you look at the Constitution makes local government more subservient to the state, not to the federal government. The theory that the local government can be harnessed and hijacked by federal government is unconstitutional law. I can tell you that. The closest party to managing local government is the state. And it makes sense for economic development. You cannot, if you take over this, okay, let the state, federal government also take over markets, take over sanitation,
and the motor
and
parks.
everything in the local area. You have to agree that the states are the ones who have greater proximity and control over local government. So yes, I'm angry that the governors have totally destroyed democracy. But again, somebody argue, federal government do have democracy, do have National Assembly working as it ought to be. We have democracy deficit up to bottom, top to bottom. Our job is to fight for it and not use as excuse to really destroy the fundamentals of democracy. So I think it's a wrong idea to say federal government, INEC go and do local government because you don't like the governors, because the governors have, freezing you, take you out of space. You want to get back to the space, and they want to take to federal government what ought to be the state government. So I think it's a wrong idea, and that's not the way to go.
Thank you so very much, Associate Professor of Law, Arise Analyst, Dr. Sam Amadi, for coming to shed light on the capabilities or otherwise of INEC to assume
the responsibility
for the conduct of local government elections.